Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. I am super pumped for today's video. We're talking Terminal World 2. We do not have an official announcement yet for this set, but I am very hopeful that we will in the next couple of months. And so this is kind of like my final with like data points and a bunch of information and thoughts on a lot of these archetypes, where we are heading into the potential reveal for Terminal World 2. Because even if Konami didn't decide to do a Terminal World 2, I still think on the internal, they may have already had a couple archetypes set aside that they had maybe been planning even before the release of Terminal World 1, just to see if it did well. If it didn't do well, they still may have taken those archetypes and said, you know what, let's just put them in core sets then. Let's just give these couple archetypes support there. So regardless, we can talk about these archetypes in that manner. Even if we don't get the Terminal World 2 announced, we're basically at the mercy of Konami looking at probably their financial numbers on how well that product did for them and deciding whether or not they want to push forward with that product. We just have to hope it was just good enough. But we saw Link Reigns get 3 whole years worth of sets. We've seen other products get them, but we've also seen others go one iteration, didn't sell too well, didn't go too well, and then they get the axe. They don't get another year. So hopefully this is not one of those, but we will see as we go. So I want to start by going through the archetypes. I did a popularity poll on my community tab on YouTube. Thank you so much if you participated in that. That's very, very helpful here. Oh, let's move this up so we can see it. A lot of stuff here. So a lot of interesting surprises to me. Let's start from the bottom and work our way up, I guess. Starting all the way. So we have 23 archetypes outside. I guess on this list it's only 22 because I have 2 combined because of just like the way the names work out. 23 to 22 different archetypes. If you take out the 4 that we got last year, they should obviously not be considered for this year's dual terminal or Terminal World set. Let's get into the least popular. Constellar, 1 vote for me. Very, very bad. Naturia tied for last, also with 1 vote. Maybe being a recently very powerful deck. I'm very surprised that this one only got 1 vote, to be honest. Then you go to Ally of Justice with 2 votes. Man, that one sucks. I'm surprised that one wasn't last. Gishki with 3 votes. Then you go Fabled with 5 votes. Gem Knights with 5 votes, tied there. Flamvels and Teller Knights tied with 7 votes. Shadal's, Gusto, and Laval all tied with, 9 votes? Yep. Then you have Mist Valley, Dragoonity, and Yang Zing all tied for 10 votes. Then you move to Zephyra with 11. That's my boy. That's my horse in the race. I'm praying Zephyra ends up in here. That would make me the happiest duelist on the planet. Durak ends up here with 13 votes. Very surprising for Durak, in my opinion. Other things, very surprised that Shadal was this low and Durak was this high. I was very surprised that Durak had so many people who love it. People like dinosaurs, I guess. All right, Vylon and Worms tied here with 15 votes, tied for 5th. That's pretty good. Klee with 16 votes. Necros with 19 votes. X-Sabers with 20. Very shocked. I thought X-Saber would have some legacy, nostalgia for some very older players in the game. I just didn't think it would hold up to get its 2nd place on the list here. And then the final one, which is kind of interesting and makes sense when you really look at the data behind it, but it's L-Swarms. And this is the one archetype where I combine 2 different names, Steel Swarms and Evil Swarms, because they do function separately as archetypes. There were only 5 or 6 people who voted for Steel Swarms, but there were way more for Evil Swarms, and then some people just put L Swarms entirely. So I thought it made the most sense just to combine them because, let's be honest, if Konami even did pick this as a theme to use in a Terminal World 2, kind of similar to Teller Knight and Constellar, which they did with their most recent support from a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they'd probably just give them both support at the same time, and all the cards would just say, add an L-Swarm card, summon an L-Swarm card, search an L-Swarm card, you know what I mean? So it'd probably end up being support for both anyway, and I think that makes sense that Konami could look at it as from a marketing standpoint. This is a way for us to make 2 separate fan bases in our community happy at the same time. Fans of Steel Swarm who don't care about Evil Swarm, and to fans about Evil Swarm that don't care about Steel Swarm. We can hit them both at the same time, help both decks, similarly to what they did with Constellar and Teller Knights. But yeah, 24 votes. Very shocked that even with them combined, I'm still shocked that they end up getting first here. But it is what it is. So you have to keep in mind, as much as I think this is cool, and I'm happy I did this, and it gave me a good outline, You have to take everything here with a grain of salt. These are not completely unbiased opinions. We're taking a very small subsection of the fans of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is fans, one, mostly TCG fans, TCG players, not OCG players. I don't think too many OCG players follow the channel. But also, my channel specifically, I focus on a lot of rogue decks. I talk specifically about some of my favorite decks at nauseum sometimes. So I've done multiple videos about Zephyra. So I wonder if Zephyra maybe is boosted a little bit here just because I've talked about it multiple times. That may be why some of the people were even interested in my channel in the first place. But I also think that in the OCG, which is where they care more about like where they're pulling popularity numbers from, they also have shown a propensity to love Zephyr more than the TCG players do. So it kind of bounces out a little bit there. And there are even some ones up here that I've like never talked about before, really. And like, so they still did well. So I don't think it skewed it too much, but you have to take everything with a grain of salt. We are pulling from a specific population, which is important to at least acknowledge as we look at data like this. Okay, so that's cool for the popularity poll. So theoretically, if Konami wanted to pull the 4 most popular archetypes, at least according to my fan base, Elsworms, X-Sabers, Necros, and Cleaforts would be your top 4 options there. Now, I don't think Konami would do that, especially if they maybe plan on doing a Terminal World 3. If the first 2 do well still, they may want to save some of the top options for next set as well to make sure all 3 can do decently well. All right, next up we need to move to a tier list. This tier list is to decide what type of archetypes these are in terms of how good are they. Because when we look at the last year's archetypes, they kind of fell into weird categories, right? To me, it was like 3 main categories. Gen X, the bottom of the barrel, like basically a deck that does nothing and has not been a deck in forever, or even an engine in basically, not forever, but in a very, very long time. They are so outdated. They're just so bad. And a lot of these dual terminal archetypes are pretty old and haven't gotten support in a while. They do fall under that category, which is a little bit of like kind of a bummer to me, right? Because I think most of the archetypes that would get selected that are going to be in that tier list do find themselves in a position where I'm like, is 4 cards enough? They gave Gen X like a really broken Link 1, and like that deck's not going to see any competitive play. Didn't in the OCG, it's not really in the TCG, but for fans of that specific archetype, it may make them just playable, and have like a win condition, which is at least good. Then you have Iceberry and Ritual Beast. This is like the main tier for me, because these archetypes had like a couple cards that are decent, a couple cards you definitely look at and go, okay, yeah, there's something here. Ritual Beast used to be good. Iceberries were never really that good, but then they got their structure deck, and that gave them a couple of solid engine pieces, and then they put it all together with really good cards, really powerful cards that really tie those decks together in a way that can work in 2023/2024 now. And then the top tier is Infernoid. This one is important to note as well. If you look at the power level of all the support, the weakest support was Infernoid. And I think that was on purpose, right? It was coming out at a similar time as Snake Eye and the Sinful Spoils engine, so Konami knew those cards were already going to be very helpful in that deck as well. But also just Infernoids were by far the best archetype out of these 3. If they gave them 4 cards on the level of support that like Iceberry and Ritual Beast got, this deck may be tier 0 best deck in the game type stuff, right? So they don't want to go too hard on the decks that are already like legitimately solid right now, already have a really good base. Luckily, none of the archetypes we're looking at here are like legit rogue decks or higher, really, at all right now. So there is a little bit of wiggle room, but we'll get into that. Okay, so let's get into this. Starting off with Evil Swarms here. This definitely goes in the Icebearer Ritual Beast tier for me. This deck has good extra deck monsters and a couple of decent trap cards. They just have no monsters or spells, like to really like put bodies on the field and get into that extra deck. That is what we want to see here. That would be best case scenario. That'd be really cool. They could basically become like a better Exosister if we could get something like that. But we'll see. Cleese, same tier for me. They've been power crept enough where they're not necessarily Infernoid tier, but they can get to a towers. They have some nice engine pieces. They just need a couple more pushes, and their pendulum archetypes are already working behind the 8-ball here. But yeah, Worms definitely go in the Gen X category. This is a pretty poo theme. They have some interesting monsters that you look at and you go, oh yeah, okay, but it's not great still. Laval's, same thing. There's a couple of interesting cards, but man, they're not enough to get me up into the Ice Barrier or Ritual Beast category. Dragoonity definitely down here, or in this category. After their structure check, they have some nice pieces. They're a playable deck. They're just not like good enough to be legit rogue in the current competitive format, but I know they have some fans out there. If they gave support though, I just would want them to make it clear Dragoonity support and not just more Dragon Link fodder like Romulus ended up being for them. That would be my one wish there. I guess I would probably have to put Necroz in the Infernoid tier. This deck was the best deck in the game at one point. I know that was quite a while ago, and they've been power crept pretty hard since then. But you can't deny they've got a lot of solid engine cards. They don't need a ton. Maybe they could give them better cards, some better cards than what Infernoid's got, but like they can't give them Ice Barrier or Ritual Beast level cards, I feel like, because then this deck would be really, really scary. But I think it's definitely good enough to be considered Infernoid tier. Pre-support. Steel Swarm's definitely Gen X level. These cards, so many of their archetypal cards are out of this world bad. Doesn't work for me. Gusto, I would put in Ice Barrier Ritual Beast. I know it's not been like a coherent deck, but man, read some of their cards. They've got a couple of decent synchros that help them like a synchro climb pretty well. They've got a couple of monsters that like with the right engine cards around them could really allow them to flourish. And also this equip spell, I think it's Tailwind of the Gusto. This card reads crazy to me. So they actually do have enough playable cards that I think like this could actually be count for this tier overall. Next up we move to X-Saber. This is another one for the Gen X tier, unfortunately. For being the second most popular deck in the popularity poll, it is kind of a bummer that this one still falls under like the poo tier. It's tough, man. They don't have many like playable cards. They have the Synchro Gotems that hand rips non-once per turn. I'm terrified of him, but other than him, there's like not many cards that I even read and I go, that's playable, like at all. So doesn't work for me. Vylons definitely end up in Gen X tier as well. Jurak is interesting. I'm gonna put them in Gen X, but it's with a caveat. The caveat for them is that while they have one playable card, and it's a trap card that says if you control a dinosaur monster with 2,500 or more attack, destroy every card on the field. Other than that card, I'm not sure there's a single playable Jurak card in existence. That being said, it is an all-dinosaur archetype, which means Oviraptor, Fossil Dig, UCT, Miscellaneousaurus, and so on. Those cards all kind of like factor in here. So like if they kind of similar to Naturia when they got their cards like 2 years ago, they got 3 new cards. They only played 2 old cards. Like basically the engine was almost completely new. So if they just make like a 4-card engine that just ends up being another cool engine for dinosaurs, that could still work. And a lot of their stuff was level 4 before, so maybe it helps dinos connect to like Dolka and Lagia more consistently, or earlier at least in their plays. That could definitely be something to take a look at. Okay, Mist Valley. This one still ends up in Gen X tier for me. I know Avion's kind of scary. I know the Avion plus Thunderbird setup is kind of something, but after that, it's like the field spell is okay, and everything else for them is like unplayably bad. I'm not sure 4 cards could make a coherent deck. Yang Zings, this is definitely Ice Barrier / Ritual Beast tier. Even though we do have Denglong, which is a huge, huge booster for them, I still look at them and I'm like, how did... Yang Zing has no starters. Yang Zing has no starter cards. It is a deck full of bricks, and so you have to rely on other engines to get you to Denglong. So I think they're still in the market for like solid support that at least like via their own cards making Denglong. Zephyra may be in the very top of this tier. I think they're probably the best deck from this tier where they currently stand from what we have in here right now. But I don't think they're quite good enough to put them in Infernoid tier. This is a deck that, honestly, if they got one great main deck monster, like another scale that's like on the level of Zephyrath, but like maybe one-ish card combo. It doesn't have to be an amazing combo, just like one-ish play starter. That way Zephyrath is not like your bloodline where like if it gets stopped you auto lose. That would be really, really nice. Naturia, probably an Infernoid tier. They're so good they have like a card banned from their most recent support. So yeah, I think this is an easy Infernoid tier. Shadal, definitely Infernoid tier. They still have a lot of good cards. They're a little bit slower, but they've got good fusion spells. They've got great fusion monsters. They've got good utility, but they're a little slow, a little bricky, and that's about where what they can, like, that's the exact kind of thing where they could kind of clean up the archetype, similar to what they tried to do for Infernoid. Ally of Justice, in maybe the worst archetype here. Yeah, probably. Gishki, I'd put Gishki in Infernoid tier just because they got support quite recently, actually, like right after Power of the Elements. And to be honest, it never really saw play in the TCG, so you may have forgotten this, but this was a playable deck with Sprite. In the OCG, they just banned Elf before we ever got a chance to play them together. Elf plus the Gishki stuff, really. And so it did, without Elf, it wasn't good enough as a as a combination to work out. So that's like really, really interesting. But I do think they're like still kind of close just because of that, and like the Sprite stuff still can help them. It's just not all the way there with that, so it wouldn't need that much insane support to kind of like get all the way there, I think. Constellar to me is in Gen X tier. It's probably on the higher end of Gen X tier because they do have a couple things they can do, but like the Constellar extra monsters are not great. The Tellarknight ones are significantly better, which is why we can put them up here with Ice Barrier / Ritual Beast here. In fact, you know what? You can even put Tellarknights in Infernoid tier because they are so close. I mean, I've talked about this before. I thought they were like a wording on one sentence of one of the newer support cards from 2 years ago, from like being like a significantly better deck. They don't have one card plays. They only have 2 card plays that are pretty easy to disrupt, and they don't play through them significantly well. So that's where this deck kind of falls to itself. But I still think like with that support, if they got 4 more cards, they actually could be pretty nasty because some of their combos are very, very strong there. Okay, finishing up here, Flambells, definitely Gen X tier, not even close. They're just terrible. Fableds are pretty interesting. I don't even know fully what's going on with Fableds because they got like 4 or 5 new cards in a core set like 3 or 4 years ago, and now the Fiendsmith engine just dropped, which is like actually really good support for this engine, for this deck. I just haven't really seen anybody mess around with it because everybody's been playing Fiendsmith in like everything, so I really haven't seen much with Fabled specifically, but I do think that's interesting. So I'd put them here. They could still probably use like legit win conditions that I don't remember them having, but that could also be a memory. But I think they still probably fit in this tier at this point. And I'd also put Gem Knights in here. I know they have a lot of powerful cards, but so many of their cards have been designed to go second, and they don't do it right. Like we've seen, right? If you need to go second, if you're going to go second, it needs to be Tenpai Dragon-esque, where it's very hard to interact with you. You have protection type cards like the Field Spell. This deck doesn't really protect itself much that way, so it just kind of plays second and probably just loses to interaction. But they do have some cards. They do have some engine stuff. I know a lot of people feel sour about this deck because probably the last memory they have with this deck is like Gem Knight FTK, which sucks, but outside of that, like, definitely we could see some stuff there. All right, and the last thing I want to go over here is one more little volley through all of the decks, which I think there's like 10 of them out of these 13 or 23 archetypes that have gotten support within the last, basically since 2020. So basically the last 4.5 years or somewhere in that range, they've gotten support. So the first one is Fabled, which they got their cards I was talking about just recently with the core set. Or actually, we can move that up. That'll make that easier for doing the rest. Doing it this way, you end up with I don't know, you're still less than like 3.5 years away from the last time this archetype got support. I don't think the Fiendsmith stuff like really deters Konami from doing more stuff, but this does always and always has felt like knockoff Dark World, so just keep that in mind. But this we're still in a time frame where I think Konami could still make support for this if they wanted. Dragoonity. The last time they got support was their structure deck in the OCG, which was August 2022. Or 2020. That was actually before that. Still, same thing, pretty close to like 3.5 years. I don't think that's quite long. That's not new enough for them to really care that much. Then you move to December of 2020, Again, still in that same range. We get 2 Shadal monsters, but they don't change much. We get a Necroz monster. Deck still doesn't see any play. The Laval cards still doesn't see any play, right? Then we get to Daigusta Laprampilica. This is from Dawn of Majesty. This is from April 2021. So we're a little bit closer. We're kind of in that, right around that 3-year mark. But again, this didn't really change anything, and this was for one of the lesser archetypes from the Dual Terminal lore anyway, so they could still appreciate 4 more cards. Gem Knights, this is a whole year later, so this is 2022 April. We do get the Gem Knight support in Power of the Elements. Again, it's a deck that's terrible. It's been ravaged on the ban list with like Block Dragon and stuff going, so with these cards, still nothing really changes for them. But we are on the cusp there. That's about 2 years. I think that may be enough for Konami to kind of leave them alone, potentially. Naturia. I feel very strongly that Naturia has about 0% chance of being in this in Terminal World 2 if it is a set, because of 2 things. One, it's gotten support since what, late 2022, so we're talking less than 2 years, a year and 9 months, 10 months. Since they recently got support, so we're within that 2-year span, and that support was so good that it got one of their archetypal cards banned. So I think Konami would actually look at releasing World Tree off the ban list before they'd actually go and worry about giving them 4 new cards. Then you have Gishki. This came out even after that. This is late 2022. This is October 2022 for them. That's probably just too new. That's legit a year and a half ago. That is pretty fresh for them to throw them another 4 cards. And the cards they got in this set actually were not bad at all. They were like decent cards. So I think that misses the mark for me. I think that's probably too recent. I think Gishki's probably out as well. And then lastly, your Teller Knight / Constellar cards in here as well. But this is early 2023. This is January 2023. So we're only talking a year and 3 months or whatever, a year and 4 months since this stuff came out. So that's even fresher. I doubt they'd be in here. I mean, the saving grace is that like they didn't see much play, and like they could do something there. I would be happy about it because this is one of the archetypes I like more, and I'm still just kind of disappointed that the support didn't come through and actually help them that much. But I doubt it. So I think from probably Gem Knights and on, these last 4 archetypes, or I guess 5 you consider Constellar too. Gem Knights, Naturia, Gishki, and then Teller Knights and Constellars. Those 5 to me are probably out of contention, which only leaves us with like 18 other archetypes, and leaves us with a little bit of room. And to be fair, most of those archetypes there are actually on the lower end. In fact, what is the highest ranking one out of those that we just eliminated? Lavals, which are tied for 9 votes, which is like tied for whatever, 13th or 14th, which is pretty far behind. So I'm not too worried about those archetypes being eliminated. But yeah, I guess the last thing I'll mention here from my end, my perfect 4 that I believe. Listen, one of them is Teller Knights for me, but like it is what it is. That's one of the archetypes I like, and I wish they had done better with the support a year and a half ago. But for me, it's L Swarms. I really would like to see Evil Swarms get a new wave. I do think they have some solid pieces, and like just hard focus Konami on like main deck cards that just say level 4 L Swarm monsters on the field. Bang, bang, bangs. Put a bunch of them. Make it so the engine can summon 4 Evil Swarm monsters on the field, and that way you can make like 2 Exceed monsters potentially. That'd be the best thing they could do for them, because the traps and the extra monsters are solid already. X-Sabers I think are probably my 4th option. It's such a legacy one, but I don't have anything else that I feel like that strongly about in terms of how much I like them, to be honest. To want them anymore. What was the other one? I have one other one in here that like I thought was okay. Can't even remember what the... wait, I said Evil Swarms. I said X-Saber, Teller Knights. Okay, yeah. Last one for me is definitely Zephyra. You guys know I love Zephyra. I think they're like one legit main deck powerful monster to like push the engine away from being like a legit really good rogue deck again. But that's my dream, is Zephyra. If Zephyra's in, I couldn't care less what else is in. Because I could hard focus on Zephyra, but we'll obviously see as we get closer to an announcement here as we go. But there you go. that's all I have here today, guys. Hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully this gave you a good idea of maybe where your expectations can lie on if Konami announces the set, what has a chance, what doesn't, what are you hoping for, all that stuff. This was a fun video to make, fun to do research for, because I do think this is a really exciting set. When we got last year's version, I was very, very pleased with the options they picked and the support they did for them. I really think they did a good job, but that's everything I have for today. But thank you so much for watching. As always, guys, subscribe to the channel for more in-depth videos like this one down the line, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.